Hey everybody, Qroo here. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Spanish verb haber, which means to have. And it's not the have as in, I have a cup here or something. That's tener. This one is haber, and it's a helping verb. And I'll talk about it in this video. This video is actually inspired by a member of my paid group, the Qroo Spanish Crew. I have a lot of interaction with folks there. And he says, look, I see this verb haber used all over Spanish in different ways, and I'm confused. And I said, you know what? Let's just do a video about it. So that's what this is. If you don't know what the Qroo Spanish Crew is, it's my paid group. I have a ton of exclusive content over there, exclusive courses, videos, exercises, downloads. There's even live events. It's not the same videos we have here. They're different. There's also a forum there where you can ask me questions directly and interact with other members, and talk about complex areas of the language. It's just a great place to boost your Spanish. If you'd like to check it out, I'll put a link to it in the description section of this video. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off. I love to break things down into categories. So I'm going to be showing you 3 different categories, 3 different ways that haber is used in Spanish. And the first one we're going to start with is as an auxiliary verb with a past participle. And I know there's a lot of grammatical terms there, don't let them freak you out. This is like English when we say, I have eaten, I have seen the movie, they have gone to the beach. They have that same construction in Spanish, and we're going to be doing it with haber. And that last part, the eaten part, seen, gone, that's the past participle. Don't worry, you'll have all this down by the end. Have you seen that movie? ¿Has visto esa película? So, has comes from haber, and visto is the past participle of ver, to see. So let's go ahead and start with just the conjugations of this. Let's take a look at haber in the present tense. And if you don't know how to conjugate a verb, all you have to do is pop over to wordreference.com, type in the verb, push conjugación, and you'll see all the conjugations and all the tenses and moods, everything. They also have a great app. I recommend you download that one. So here are our conjugations. Conjugations are always presented in the exact same order, so we don't have to think of the yo, tu, el. We just learn them in this order. Now, if you're studying Latin American Spanish, you're not going to pay attention to that vosotros form. The vosotros form is just going to be used in Spain. So when you memorize these, just skip it. You'll be like has, a, hemos, han. That's it. That's how you learn them. And for you folks studying European Spanish, you can pop that one in right there. Now, when we use this, we're only conjugating haber. The past participle isn't going to change no matter if we're talking about they have seen, she has seen, I have seen. Only haber changes, not the past participle. So let's talk about the past participle. How do we make the past participle? Well, it's not that tough. If they're regular verbs. There's always irregular verbs messing everything up. If it's a regular verb, and we'll start with AR verbs, all we're going to do is drop that AR and put ado, ADO, ado. So hablar becomes hablado. And to try something like probar would become probado. That's not too tough, right? So let's say we just want to pop something in there. Like I want to say, have you spoken with Juan? How do you think you do that? ¿Has hablado con Juan? ¿Has hablado con Juan? What if I want to say, have we spoken with Juan? ¿Hemos hablado con Juan? ¿Hemos hablado con Juan? That past participle is not going to change. We're just going to pop it in there. It's good to know how to make the past participle because you'll be using that in other areas of Spanish. All right, let's talk about ER and IR verbs. And we're talking about the endings, right? This is pretty easy. They're going to be done the same way. You're going to drop that ER or IR and just use ido. IDO, ido. So comer, to eat, becomes comido. This is where you should be speaking to the screen. And vivir, to live, becomes bebido. You got this. How about aprender, to learn? Aprendido. What if I want to make a sentence? I have learned a lot. He aprendido mucho. How about we have learned a lot? Hemos aprendido mucho. Past participle doesn't change. Love that, And when I say it doesn't change, I mean it's becoming a past participle, but you don't have to worry if it's plural or masculine, feminine. That's what I mean. Now let's talk about the irregular past participles. You're just going to have to memorize these individually. Here are some common ones. Abrir, to open, is abierto. Decir, to tell or to say, is dicho. Escribir, to write, escrito. Hacer, to make or to do, is hecho. Poner, which means to put, it is a mega verb in Spanish. You should be using it all the time anyway. The past participle of poner is puesto. Romper, to break, is roto. Ver, to see, is visto. And the last one I'm going to cover today is volver, to return, is vuelto, vuelto. Now this next part of the video is very, very important because I'm going to talk about the differences in how this is used, how this present perfect is used between Latin American Spanish and European Spanish. And this is a pretty significant difference. I'm going to kick it off with Latin American usage. And I'm also going to make a little note here that Bolivia and Peru are going to do it more like European Spanish. All right, but for the rest of Latin America, when you're using the present perfect, it's going to be very similar to the usage in English. What does that mean? That means if you would say it in English, you can easily translate it over to Spanish and it's going to fit. For example, let's say I'm at a party with my wife, you know, we're talking to people and eating and everything, and I ask her, have you tried the chicken? Meaning, hey, I'm asking if you've already done it, but we're still in the present tense. You still have an opportunity to eat the chicken, so that fits, right? Well, it fits in Spanish too. ¿Has probado el pollo? ¿Has probado el pollo? Because she can still go try it. But let's fast forward a little bit. Party's over. We're on our way home. I'm driving home. And I look at her. Have you tried the chicken? She's going to be like, did I try the chicken? It doesn't fit, right? It doesn't. Well, it wouldn't fit in Spanish either. You would have to use the preterite in Latin American Spanish. ¿Probaste el pollo? ¿Probaste el pollo? Well, in European Spanish, you may hear that also, like, ¿probaste el pollo? That's fine. But in parts of Spain, not all of it, but in parts of Spain, and like we talked about Peru, Bolivia, some areas around there, you're going to have something called the perfect of recency. And there's a tendency to use the perfect tense to talk about events that occurred in the recent past, especially that day. We're no longer at the party, we're driving. You could ask the person, you know, ask my wife, ¿Has probado el pollo? And I give an ad, en la fiesta, meaning did you try the chicken at the party? Now when I translate it to English, I have to use the past tense. That's the only option I have. It's something to keep in mind if you're ever translating from Spanish back into English and you see sentences like that. You'll see it with the verb ir a lot. Instead of just saying like fui, you know, fui a la tienda, like I went to the store, you may see he ido a la tienda, like I have gone to the store. But when we translate in English, it's I went to the store. Just something to keep in mind. Now let's go ahead and talk about using this in the past tense. This is also called the past perfect or pluperfect, like I had eaten. Here are the conjugations: había, habías, había, habíamos, habían. And vosotros one is stuck in there for you folks that are studying European Spanish. And it's going to work the same way. We're going to just pop on our past participle and we're not going to change it in any other way. So Maria had read the book. María había leído el libro. Maria had eaten the pizza. María había comido la pizza. Same thing, same pattern. One of the easiest ways to learn Spanish is just learn the pattern and repeat the pattern. So there's your pattern, folks. All right, so that was our first category of usage of haber. Let's jump to our second category. And this is one of my favorites. And this is to use haber as an impersonal verb, meaning is there or are there. And we're only going to have to learn one word in the present tense. Well, all of our tenses is like one word. Let's start with the present tense. I. Like your I. That word comes from haber. And it means is there, are there, there is, there are, just depending if it's a statement or a question, right? Hay café? Is there any coffee? Hay fresas? Are there any strawberries? Sí, hay fresas. Yes, there are strawberries. This is one of the first words I teach any beginning Spanish student because you don't have to conjugate anything. You're just taking this word and popping in nouns. You don't care if they're singular, plural, what they are, it fits, you know? Hay mesas? Are there any tables? Sí. Hay mesas afuera? Are there any tables outside? Hay mucho tráfico? Is there a lot of traffic? Sí hay. See, I can just answer like that. This one's fantastic. Now let's talk about using this in other tenses. We're going to jump to the past tense. And you're actually going to be learning this in the imperfect, which is había, and in the preterite, hubo. but it's still just one word each. It's not too bad, right? Let's talk about the imperfect first. You'll be using this most of all to help you set your background for things. For example, when I went to the office, there was a lot of traffic on the highway. This one is perfect for había. Cuando fui a la oficina, había mucho tráfico en la carretera. There were a lot of people in the park. You can probably do that one, right? This fits that too, imperfect. Había mucha gente en el parque. There were a lot of people in the park. Let's say, I was passing through and my wife asked me, ¿había mucha gente en el parque? Sí, había mucha gente. Yeah, there were a lot of people. Now let's talk about when to use the preterite, hubo, hubo. You will not be using this as often, I'm going to tell you. It comes in handy with things that occur in a really short period of time, like an accident. You'll hear it a lot of times. Hubo un accidente. There was an accident. Like, because it happened just then. Boom. Hubo un accidente. And you'll also hear it for events that, took place at a certain time. For example, yesterday there was a concert in the park. Ayer hubo un concierto en el parque. That could fit. I'm just talking about an event occurred there. The end. But if I'm setting more background, then I'm back to my imperfect. ¿Sabes qué? You know what? Fui al parque y había un concierto y había mucha gente. I went to the park and there was a concert. There were a lot of people. We're back to imperfect. If you don't know which one to use it that imperfect. Go with había, había, había. Now you may want to use this in the future tense, so here it is. Habrá, habrá. Here's an example of that. I believe there will be a lot of traffic at that time. Creo que habrá mucho tráfico a esa hora. I don't use it in the future tense as much, but like I say all the time, you be you, right? Now, I haven't talked about the subjunctive at all in this particular video, which is unusual for me because I think it's a keystone for mastering Spanish, so I bring it up a lot. But I am going to talk about it just in this section for folks who are using the subjunctive and want to know how that's going to work with this particular construction. So in our present subjunctive, we have haya, haya. Here's an example. Dudo que haya más café. I doubt there's more coffee. And why is the subjunctive being used there? Because it's dudar que, to doubt that something, and that is a subjunctive trigger. If you don't know what a subjunctive trigger is, or you don't know what the subjunctive is, I have a playlist dedicated to that. I just suggest you binge watch it, or come on over and join us in the Qroo Spanish Crew. I have a bunch of exclusive videos about the subjunctive so you can get that topic down, all right? Now, in the past tense, we're going to be using hubiera. Now, there are two conjugations in the past tense, so it could be hubiera and hubiese. These se endings are an alternative when we're talking about the imperfect subjunctive, but you never have to use them, you never have to learn them, don't waste your time. And the reason is that the ra endings in the imperfect subjunctive are the ones you're going to hear in spoken Spanish, and in writing, you're probably going to see probably 50-50, but you'll figure the other ones out. If you just learn the ra endings, you're going to be fine. You never have to use the other ones. So just use hubiera. And we'll use an example. El alcalde insistió en que hubiera más espacios verdes para los habitantes. The mayor insisted that there be more green spaces for the inhabitants. And why is it in the subjunctive? Why is it hubiera? Because it's a subjunctive trigger. Insistir en que is a subjunctive trigger. If you watch that playlist, or pop over to the Qroo Spanish Crew, you're not going to have a problem with that. All right, that's going to bring us to the third category that I'm going to talk about today. And this is an expression that uses I. I love that word. And this is I que plus infinitive. And I'm just going to cover this one in the present tense. It's definitely where you're going to use it the most. And it's how you would say you have to or need to or it's necessary, but it's an impersonal expression. Unlike tener que plus infinitive, to have to, where you have to conjugate the verb to match. For example, tengo que estudiar, I have to study. Tienes que estudiar, you have to study. With I que, we never have to do that. So it's very general. So if I said something like, hay que estudiar para aprender, one has to study in order to learn, or it's necessary to study in order to learn. It's an impersonal expression, but it's not always 100% impersonal. For example, let's say somebody's doing something, preparing a meal, and you're like, oh, you have to cut the celery. You could use like hay que and say something like, hay que cortar el apio. Meaning, literal translation would be more like it's necessary to cut the celery. One has to cut the celery because I'm not changing the verb. But just think of it as a really useful impersonal one that you can give great general advice. Just pop in different verbs. Hay que pensar antes de hablar. One has to think before speaking. And of course, if you're saying that to an individual person because they've just done something stupid, they're going to take it more like you have to think before speaking. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, just do me a favor and give it a thumbs up. And until next time, hasta luego.